There are some idiots who hate Israel because they actively support Hamas's genocidal anti-Semitic goals. Then there are idiots who hate Israel because they believe the IDF is violating international law and committing war crimes in Gaza. I think that argument is nonsense and probably not for the reason most people think. My view is that international law as a concept is bullshit, and that no one should take it seriously. Hello internet, my name is Kaya Willis and welcome back to my channel. Let me start by saying that I am not claiming to be an expert in international law. And I know a lot of people are going to dismiss this entire video and all of my arguments because I don't have special credentials that they think would make me qualified to talk about this subject. But I don't think that you have to be an expert in anything to criticize it. I, and almost everyone, criticize laws all the time. In Iran, it's legal to kill women who don't cover their hair, and I don't think you have to have a law degree to know that that's wrong and shouldn't be legal. The internet is free, and I think that more people should use it to do their own research and come to conclusions and to challenge experts, even those who have special credentials. Let me add that in this particular context, probably like 99% of people who are accusing Israel of committing war crimes have done significantly less research than I have done on this topic. But anyways, the first problem that I have with international law is that it's not a real law. Most people think of international law the same way they think of a domestic law. The government writes a rule, and if you violate it, there is some punishment that's enforced by police, courts, and jails. For example, if you steal something or you murder someone, you get arrested, you are put on trial, and if you're found guilty, you're forced to go to jail. Pretty straightforward, right? However, this is not how international law works. It's not enforceable at all. International law is a series of treaties, domestic policies, and international organizations that have to be voluntarily opted into. And if you violate the rules of these organizations or break these treaties, there's no real enforceable punishment, except maybe the other countries not liking you. It's like if stealing and murder were considered illegal only if you're part of the stealing and murder is illegal club, or if you sign some document agreeing that those things are wrong. But then whether you join the club or not, or whether you sign the document or not, if you do steal or murder someone, the only punishment is that the other people who are part of the club don't want to be your friend anymore. There is no international government. There is no international police. And although there is an international court, the UN, the ICJ, the ICC, none of these organizations actually have any power to enforce the rules they want people to follow. Just look at Russia. There has been an arrest warrant out for Putin for invading Ukraine, and yet nothing has happened. International law was unable to prevent the invasion, and it's done nothing to stop the invasion. The worst things that have happened to Russia is that some countries, and not even all of the countries who support international law, but some have stopped trading with Russia, and Russia was banned from participating in Eurovision. But those aren't real punishments for violating any laws. Those are just countries not wanting to be affiliated with Russia anymore. But I think what's really important in this conversation about international law isn't the lack of punishment for breaking the rules, but the actual content of the rules themselves. A lot of people talk about international law and committing war crimes as if all of these agreements and rules are fundamental moral principles that should never be questioned by anyone. But like I said before, not all laws are moral, and authority figures should be questioned on things. When it comes to the morality of some of these groups and these agreements, I can see how some of them could be good if they were just done differently. If moral rights respecting countries came together and formed an alliance where they said they were going to condemn and denounce other countries who oppress their citizens and start wars, that they won't trade with those countries, and that they will consistently support countries that are defending themselves and fighting against evil. And if a country violated those rules by oppressing their citizens or supporting dictatorships or starting wars, they would be kicked out and deemed an enemy of the West. Yeah, I could see that being a positive thing for the world. However, that's not what international law or any of these organizations do. The UN, the ICJ, the ICC, these organizations can't differentiate between moral and immoral governments. Countries like North Korea, who threaten war every few years, and China, who are oppressing their Muslim population, are members of the UN. They are allowed to vote and have a voice in decisions made by the Council. Cuba is a member of the UN. Although their government imprisons political opponents, it's the US that has been condemned for refusing to trade with the authoritarian dictatorship. And while the UN condemned Iran for things like mandatory hijab law, they also appointed Iran to the chair of the 2023 Human Rights Council. They have condemned Israel 45 times since 2013 for defending itself, but refused to condemn Hamas for the atrocities it committed on October 7th. The ICJ has ruled against Israel in the past for defending itself, like when they condemned the West Bank wall in 2004. Recently, they ruled that Israel has to stop defending itself with this war in Gaza, and they did not condemn Hamas for October 7th. The ICC has issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu, and the UN has put Israel on a blacklist of countries that they claim harm children. Now, with some of these more recent decisions, Hamas has also been criticized. There is a warrant out for its leaders, and it was also placed on that same blacklist. But they are still getting funding and support from the UN organization UNRWA. Do you see the problem here? Many people believe that these international organizations like the UN, the ICC, and the ICJ are dedicated to international justice. Yet overwhelmingly, they refuse to condemn countries that are violating rights, oppressing, murdering, enslaving their own citizens or citizens of other countries. And in the few instances when they do condemn the atrocities, it's a slap on the wrist. Most importantly, they constantly morally equivalate good and evil governments. There is no logical reason that a country like Israel that is acting in self-defense, trying to protect its citizens and save lives, should be put on the same blacklist as Hamas, Russia, Iraq, and Syria. From what we have seen from organizations like the UN, the ICC, the ICJ, and generally from the international community, is that this concept of international law is not this moral law that protects the rights of people all over the world. It is a concept that gives arbitrary moral authority to evil regimes and their supporters. And with that power, they can accuse free, liberal countries of the atrocities that they themselves are committing, and gain support from the rest of the world. But I have to be honest, while Western countries are the victims of these false accusations of injustice, they are not entirely innocent in all of this. Countries like Israel and the United States keep joining these groups, accepting their rules, and taking their decisions seriously. Since the beginning of this conflict in Gaza, Israel has been putting their soldiers' lives in danger, giving Hamas aid, and constantly apologizing for defending themselves because these organizations have been angry at them. The right thing for Israel to do when they are being accused of these ridiculous things, like the ICJ case accusing them of genocide, or any of these calls for ceasefire, is to give all of these people the middle finger and continue doing what they're doing, which is keeping their citizens safe. But why is it that countries want to be part of these groups? One thing that I have heard recently is that the purpose of international law and rules of war apparently isn't to stop dictatorships or prevent wars from happening, but to keep international conflicts and wars civilized. And this is a very strange idea to me, because war is never civilized. That's kind of the whole point. In World War II, when Hitler invaded Poland and started massacring Jews in the Holocaust, that was not civilized. When the Confederacy separated from the United States because they wanted to keep enslaving people, that was not civilized. The attack on October 7th and all of the attacks from Gaza before that were not civilized. Starting a war is never civilized, and anyone who is defending themselves in a war is defending themselves from a country and a government that is not civilized. The only way to keep the world civilized is to not start wars, but international law doesn't even condemn that. I think this is because there is a more fundamental issue with the way that people view governments and international conflicts. Some people believe that all governments, whether they are dictatorships or free countries, that all cultures, whether they advocate for bloodshed or peace, and all countries, whether they start wars or are victims of invasions, are all morally equal. They believe that everyone really just wants the same things in the end. It's just that people go about it in different ways. And if you believe this, if you believe that everyone's end goal is the same, then it's easy to see why these dictatorships are allowed to be a part of the UN. The UN sees them as morally equivalent to the free countries that are part of the organization. It becomes easy to see why context is dropped when Israel and Hamas are put on the same blacklist. They're fighting each other, and some people think that fighting is always bad. There is no difference between initiating a violence and self-defense, so they're both equally condemnable no matter what happens. It even becomes easy to see why some people support Hamas and believe that a Palestinian state would be this conflict-free paradise. They think culturally, Israel, Gaza, and West Bank are all the same. They all really want peace in the end, right? So if they just all sit down and negotiate and talk through what they want, they can all live together in harmony without all of this conflict. This very naive view of the world ignores a very obvious reality that no Not everyone wants the same thing. Not everyone values peace and freedom and justice. Some people, some governments, some cultures are evil, and they need to be recognized and treated as such. I keep saying this, but people should look at Hamas's charter that says that they want to kill all of the Jews. People should listen to their interviews where they say that they want to instill an Islamic theocracy. People should watch the massive celebrations that happened in Gaza after October 7th. Then it becomes easy to see that no, they don't want the same things. They don't want the same things that I want, and they don't want the same things as most people who live in Israel, which is peace. Gaza and other evil authoritarian regimes should not be given a voice. They should not be given a seat at the table. They should not be given any moral authority when they do not value human life and flourishing the way that we in Western countries do. And any morally legitimate international law or treaty or organization needs to recognize that. Thanks for watching. If you like my content and want to see more from me, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.